eventually, as you continue to do more and more of the work and start to tune in more into yourself and start to tap into your consciousness and into your higher self and what's really inside you, and start kind of letting things fall away of the stories that have been built around your life and who you feel like you need to be, or the labels that you have taken on and the stories you have taken on, and you start to really come into who you are, right? Who you are, not what you do, how you identify, or what the things that you've done, and really come into what you are in your truest essence. That's how you start to tap into that space.
Welcome my guest, Jacarina Soto. She is first-generation Dominican American who is living her purpose of helping others heal themselves. She is passionate about empowering women to discover and embrace their unique gifts to create the life that they truly want. She's the founder of Soul Embodied, a 12-week program that allows women to reconnect to their own divine wisdom through SelfCare practices. Her focus is teaching the oneness of the spirit, mind, and body, recognizing that food brings healing, movement brings strength, and spirituality brings clarity. When all three come together in alignment, we can operate from our highest consciousness to live our most authentic life. Jacarina, welcome on the podcast. I am so honored to share this space with you and just to share your story and how you've evolved as a beautiful woman yourself. So thank you for being on Passion, Love, Pursuit.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored, truly honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Jacarina, so I have learned quite a bit about you before having you come on the podcast. And I would love if you could kind of walk us back to how you actually got into this space and how you serve women mostly today and helping them live from their highest consciousness and really rooting in their true authentic self. Take us back. And what led you to where you are today to serve in that capacity?
I think it's my whole life story, right? I lived my life from this place of people pleasing, of overachieving, and dismissing parts of myself, feeling shame, feeling guilt, and hiding parts of myself to appease others. Part of that comes from, I'm first generation Dominican American. So being an immigrant, growing up in an immigrant household and, going to school and people not eating the same things that I'm eating or just looking different. And I went to a diverse school, but, you're trying to fit in. And so you're hiding parts of yourself that you feel are going to get judged or that don't resemble what you're seeing around you or the people that you're trying to appease around you. So that was a big component for me growing up. And then it continued to snowball. I did the things that you're told to strive for that are going to bring you happiness. I went to college. I, got my degree, went into corporate, bought the house, the things that, you're checking off your to-do list, and then inside you're not happy. I was miserable. I was working corporate. There were these moments of, I graduated college, eventually found myself back in Rhode Island, and I worked finance for about 2 years. And then I picked up my stuff and moved to California. I had no real plan, but I was just like, I'm out. I can't take this. And then eventually moved out to New York, and then kind of went through the cycle coming back to Rhode Island and falling into corporate, and then thinking like, oh, I should just get my MBA. That's the logical thing to do. And looking into programs, and eventually kind of being like, I'm not happy. Like, what am I doing? And that kind of got me started on the path of working on myself. It began with, taking control in an area of my life, which I had somewhat or felt somewhat that I can take control of, which was my body, which was my nutrition, how I looked. And I started to work on myself in that aspect, eventually left corporate and went into personal training. And I loved it. I still love fitness. It's still very much part of my life. But after a few years, I found myself being like, I want to work with clients on a deeper level, but it was coming from a place of I was ready to start working on myself and start addressing some of my traumas and really peeling back the layers of why I was repeating these patterns in my life. And that's how it all began for me.
Okay, so I'm curious, being first generation, I'm curious your identity coming from your family. How had that shaped your mindset coming to being born in America and adjusting when your family wasn't originally from here? I'm wondering how how your identity was wrapped into who you were and who you needed to become because of that identity you were tied to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I felt like I lived in two very different worlds, and I'm still kind of processing it and healing. And because healing is not linear, it's cyclical. So you start the journey, and you start to see things as you continue on. You start to dive a little bit deeper, and I'm just starting to make sense on some of these things. I lived in two different worlds. My household was very, I'm Dominican, and so it was very traditional, and and then there was the American side, and it bled into everything. Like I remember wanting to just be like, I want to eat McDonald's, and like that's the cool thing, right? Like even just that,
So
and
American.
then like, so American, right? And my mom's like, what are like in Spanish, like no, like why are you gonna have that for like instead of your home cooked meal of like rice and beans and that this is so much healthier. And I just wanted to have the things that the other kids would have without having to, like make a big ordeal out of it. It affected me a lot right now as I'm understanding. My relationship with my body was a big one. Being Latina, we love curves. It's part of our culture. And we want the curves on the body. But when I was growing up, in the 90s and in the 2000s, my very formative years, what was in the heroin chic, right? You would turn on the TV, super thin, the Kate Moss. Then 2000s, we had the Britney Spears and the Christina Aguilera and the super low rise and the crop tops. And I remember being like, I want to be like that. Like I had a big butt. I had a big butt before big butts were cool, right? And like I was just like, I want to be like that. Like I hated my body as a kid, I wanted to hide it, to shut it down. And it wasn't until I got older that I came to start appreciating it. But then there was this complex around it as well, because yes, as a Latina, we want curves, right? But then there's still a lot of judgment around our bodies. So like I remember I would lose 5 pounds, and my mom would be like, "Oh my God, like you're getting too thin. You look sick." I would gain 5 pounds, and it was like, "Oh, you're starting to get a little pouchy there," So it was like making one side of me happy, right? My household happy, and fitting in with them. But then when I would go off into my reality of school, of my surroundings, of where I would hang out, I didn't feel like I looked like the women that I was seeing on TV on the magazine covers, on what was in for fashion. I couldn't wear those things. I didn't feel comfortable. So it created this war inside of me. I was trying to shut off parts of myself so I could acclimate and feel like I belong here. I'm just as American. But then when I would come into my household, it's like, oh, okay, now turn on this switch, you know?
Wow. It's almost like you're being pulled in both directions, like doing this dance between and being so disconnected from who you truly are, or not knowing because you were constantly moving back and forth through this identity and this identity. So going back to when you began, if you want to say, because I know you talk about your healing journey, and of course you help other people heal. And you mentioned you were a people pleaser and you wanted to fit in, you wanted to be accepted. So how did you discover that you were out of alignment with who you truly were? Like, how did you uncover that? Were there whispers? Was there this breaking moment, this awakening that gave you that perspective that you were out of alignment with who you truly were?
I think when we're out of alignment, we're always feeling it and we might take action. Like I look back now and in hindsight, me packing up my stuff, moving to California with no plan was like a desperate attempt to listen to myself because I was disconnected from myself. I was ignoring what I really wanted for so long that it would literally boil over. And then these massive actions would be taken to listen to myself. But then they would be it would just be that burst. And then I'd go back into ignoring myself, eventually fall back into that pattern. And it wasn't until I hit, my rock bottom a few years ago of everything in my life kind of falling apart. I was working as a personal trainer, and at that time I had blown out my shoulder and my knee. So part of my identity was gone in that moment. The thing that brought me sanity was gone. I could barely work out. I felt like so useless at that point in time. My business was pretty much non-existent. As much as I was saying I was trying to call in clients, launching programs, energetically, I wasn't fully there. Financially, I was dead broke. Like I was struggling. I was in the middle of renovations in my house that were taking forever. I was just completely stressed in all aspects of my life. Like nothing was thriving. And at the time, I thought I needed help with money mindset. I was like, I need to get a money mindset coach because that is my block. That is my issue. That's where I've always struggled. And I invested into my first mastermind program, which was business oriented. And I remember I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to get my business to thrive. And every week we would have calls and I was like hopping on there and being in complete shambles, nothing related to my business. It was me going through my awakening and starting to peel back the layers. Things were coming up for me and I just kind of threw myself into it. I was just like, okay, if it's all going to fall apart at this point in time, then let it all fall wayside. I'm going to accept this. I'm tired. I'm tired of feeling stuck. I'm tired of my own shit. Am I allowed to swear here?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah. I'm tired of my own shit. I'm sick of me. And I have no one to blame. And that was the big thing. It was I'm going to take responsibility for where I'm at. Because a lot of times we have this victim mindset of no, this is happening to me. It's this person's fault. It's my circumstances. I got to that place of I'm tired of myself. And so investing in that mastermind program, I think was the first step of one, showing myself that I was worthy. And then two, taking ownership of my life and the decisions that I had made.
Amazing. But it seems like, from my understanding, it was a misdiagnosis for what you actually needed. But yes. it was a stepping stone, right? Because you, as you said, you realized you are worthy and that you are going to take responsibility for what you considered at the time, your block, your money block and mindset. But it sounds like it wasn't exactly the right diagnosis, but it led you on this path of deeper understanding of the direction you needed to go. So I'm curious from there, since if that be the case, it wasn't the right diagnosis, how did you begin peeling back the onion, if you want to say, to uncover where you truly needed to heal or expand and really live your authentic life?
It was a misdiagnosis, but I did end up with the right coaches that I needed at that time. The program was geared towards business, but there was some space for self-care, right? And that's before self-care became very commercialized. And so understanding, starting to build a relationship with meditation and slowing down, which was something so foreign to me because my validation came from doing.
Which a lot of people is
Yeah.
doing, progress, success. Like a lot of people are very much attached their identity to success and their worthiness to success. So yes, not to interrupt, but I think that's
No.
so important when you create the time and the space to really just be and accept what is and to let it flow, opposed to like forcing it to happen and like just all the doing. That's what I loved about COVID. It was like, if you're so wrapped up into doing, this is where you just get to be. Slow down. Everybody needed it. Anyways.
Yeah. No. I'm grateful for that time that we had of having to slow down. It really forced us to slow down. And I'm so grateful because it did create a space for healing to begin for many, or to continue to peel back the layers for those that were already on that path. So I'm grateful for that. But yes, it is shifting out of the doing, right? And being. We are human beings. And I think that every time I say that, that's just like it sinks in more and more. I had to shift out of the doing. I come from this, I grind, I hustle, I make things happen. I'm going to get what I want. And that force energy, and then coming into the space of slowing down and being able to take care of myself and start listening to myself. Even when it came to the way that I worked out, it started to shift for me. I went from heavy weight training, powerlifting, to now being in a space of, if I need to walk, I'm going to walk. Or just sit in my meditation practice, or just dance it out, or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be this hardcore regiment. So it just started to shift the relationship that I was having with myself, to start allowing myself to nurture me. Because I never did that. I never allowed myself to slow down and to be nurtured. So by starting that path, of which I thought was, I needed help around my business and my money mindset, I started creating the space for me to kind of start slowing down and start to listen to myself. And as I continued through that, and everything continued to fall apart, and I continued to listen, that's when Reiki came into my life, and it transformed everything. I went in for my first session, and it was something that, it was a beautiful session, but there was something about this that I recognized, that it wasn't foreign to me. And I had heard about Reiki. I had had friends that had tried it, had talked about it. I even tried to book a session prior to, and nothing came about. And then it just magically fell into place one day. And I ended up having a session with this beautiful soul who ended up actually being my teacher. And I took it and I ran with it. I didn't know where it was going, where it was leading me, but I'm like, there's something about this. This is somehow tied to my purpose. And I know that I'm meant to help people on a deeper level. And that was something that was missing for me in personal training, because I was watching clients come in and out, and something would happen in their life and they didn't have the tools, the coping skills to listen to what they needed and continue to take care of themselves. They would kind of fall off and get wrapped up in whatever was happening. And, eventually, come back, or maybe not, and so I felt this calling of, I need to work with people on a deeper level. It's much more than fitness. And so when Reiki came in, it was like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm supposed to help people. And that's how.
And I love that you share the mind, body, spirit. It's all intertwined and connected. They're not separate. And so if you could kind of go deeper into that. Well, first, before I go into that, Reiki, I would love if, for those that don't know of it, what it is, can you kind of give us a little synopsis what Reiki is and how is that a tool to help us get more connected with our body and our soul?
Yeah. So Reiki is a Japanese modality of healing, and it actually allows you to create that relationship with the mind, body, and spirit. It's a more of a like somatic modality, so it's bringing your awareness into the body and allowing you to connect with your spirit. It helps you clear out your chakras, clear out any stagnant energy in your aura. I'm using life force, universal life force energy. It's never coming directly from me. I think a lot of times when people hear Reiki or see someone that's like, oh, a Reiki healer or a Reiki practitioner, they think that the energy is coming from that person, but it's never coming from me or that practitioner. We are able to tap into this universal energy and allow it to channel through us and connect to you. And then your higher being, your body, your energy field is directing the energy. We're just here to kind of help move it along. And just, I always say I'm the translator. I'm just translating what you're needing to the Reiki, and Reiki is just bringing it right to you. And the beautiful thing with Reiki is that it meets you exactly where you are. It's always going to provide the healing that you're ready to receive because you are actually the person that's healing yourself. And so that's pretty much how Reiki works. It's very relaxing. A lot of the times people will come in and they fall asleep or they feel themselves floating off. They also might feel tingling in the body, but it's almost like getting a massage, but without me having to really touch you. I'm just usually like hovering over your body. But it's a very relaxing and beautiful experience.
Can you share a little bit? Because I've had somebody talk about the somatic healing and the difference between if you were to do, let's say, talk therapy opposed to somatic, the need for somatic movement, meaning like when there is trauma, it gets trapped in our body and people don't realize that that could be stored for years and years and years and years, and it's just layer upon layer. And that's why it's so important to do the somatic work. So can you share a little bit deeper onto that, explaining how trauma affects us in our body and why, if we don't work with that, we will not truly ever be healed?
Yes.
That's the truth.
Yeah. I feel like that's the truth, but to each his own. And I know that our traumas live in our body. And the importance of pulling in the somatic therapies is because our mind is always trying to protect us and stay in the state of its safety. And so if you go to a normal like talk therapy session, you can kind of censor yourself. You can limit what you're going to express, right? You can kind of change the narrative around an experience. A lot of the times we'll downplay the experiences that we have in our lives and be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like I grew up in this horrible household full of violence, or I experienced a loss of a parent, or and we'll downplay it. It wasn't that bad. Oh, thank you. Don't feel bad for me. Like we feel like this thing of like we have to be stoic, we have to be strong. And so when you pull in a somatic therapy like breath work or Reiki or any of these other therapies, you're bypassing the mind and the body takes over. The trauma is trapped in our nervous system. It's trapped in our bodies. It's probably showing up as aches and pains or, some kind of, maybe even worst case scenario, some kind of form of disease, right? Because it's just ease in the body. And so when you go into something like that, if you're going into a somatic therapy, you're tuning out the mind. The mind is completely being bypassed, and the wisdom that is in your body starts to take over. You start to feel where there is tension, where you're feeling tension, where you're feeling tightness. things might start to cramp up. You start to experience things that you're just like, holy cow, wait, what's happening? You have no control. The way that the mind would want to control that experience, the body just starts to like let out. It starts to shake. It starts, you might start crying. You might start laughing. You might start screaming. The mind can't control what the body is experiencing at that point. And that's how you start to kind of release and start to tune into what's been trapped there. The mind is always going to find a way to protect itself. It wants to, as much as we say we want more for ourselves. We don't want to live in this pattern or in this pain, or we don't want to attract this kind of person into our lives. It's familiar.
Yeah.
So there's a safety in that story.
I think that's so important to mention, is how our mind always tries to keep us safe. That's what it's meant to do. So I love the fact that you say through this work, through somatic, you bypass that mind, and so that you have more freedom to just be and move through it. I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. So I love that. So when we talk about like our higher consciousness and how to tap into our consciousness, what does that look like to you? What does that mean to you to get to this space where we're in a higher consciousness?
So there's 3 phases of the mind. And so we have our unconscious mind, which is trapped in our past. You can say like your egoic mind, the part of you that wants to stay safe. You have your conscious mind, which is being in the present and being open. And then you have your superconscious mind. And that is your connection into your higher power, into knowing who you're meant to be and knowing your oneness with all that is around you, and just being plugged in. When we get those moments of downloads of clarity, that's coming from that space of that super conscious mind. And so it's being able to create practices and implementations in your life that allow you to kind of be able to bring yourself into that space more often. A lot of the times we probably, or for the majority of our lives, we've probably been operating from the unconscious mind, the unconscious beliefs that we have, we're creating those patterns, and those limiting beliefs that might be there, right? And then as you start to do any kind of level of work, whether it's going to talk therapy, doing, implementing meditation, even bringing in fitness, anything that allows you to start kind of tuning into yourself, you start to shift into that conscious state of being more fully present, and being able to feel more in tune with yourself. And then you're usually kind of hopping in between. You're never in one state, right? We're ever evolving. And so we're usually going kind of back and forth. And then eventually, as you continue to do more and more of the work and start to tune in more into yourself and start to tap into your consciousness and into your higher self and what's really inside you, and start kind of letting things fall away of the stories that have been built around your life and who you feel like you need to be, or the labels that you have taken on and the stories you have taken on, and you start to really come into who you are, right? Who you are, not what you do, how you identify, or what the things that you've done, and really come into what you are in your truest essence. That's how you start to tap into that space.
I love that. And actually, I was at a luncheon the other day, and instead of, because so many people say, like, what do you do? That's always a question, to get to know somebody. But she instead asked, tell us who you are. Like, who are you being in the world? Instead of what are you doing? What do you do? And the answers that come out are just so beautiful, number one, and they're so unique to each individual when you actually answer that from a true heart-centered space. And it's like, it makes you really connect to somebody in such a deeper level. So I think that's a good question that any of us could start to ask others to get to know them. And also it's a good way to have somebody practice to live in the space of being who they are, opposed to being attached to their identity to what they do. I think that's super important. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was a beautiful practice. So what are some of the recommendations that you share with your clients that you work with? I know you have a program called Soul Embodied, which we'll talk about, but I'm curious, what are some of the practices you suggest people to start doing if they feel they're at this point, anyone listening, they just feel disconnected from who they truly are. They don't even know what it means. Like when they look at themselves in the mirror, when they look at themselves, they are like, what am I doing? Like, am I really living? Is this who I truly am? Like, am I seeing myself? So for anybody that's feeling in that space, where would you guide them?
I would definitely recommend, do this with my clients all the time, just start taking care of yourself, right? Self-care, my meditation teacher always says, self-care is being self-aware. And it's really coming into the awareness of what you're needing at that point in time and how to really start taking care of yourself and start nurturing yourself and honoring what you're needing, instead of living from this place of like the to-do list and all the things that is weighing on you and the things that you have to get done throughout your day, but really tuning into what am I needing to do? What am I really wanting to do? And pouring your energy into those spaces. Some of the simple ways to start taking care of yourself is honoring your body, right? Bringing in movement. And I share, my fitness journey was very different a few years ago when I was in the personal training space. It was very regimented. It was very structured. I didn't count macros, but I focused on the macros. I focused on the protein, carbs, and fats, right? And that was all that mattered to me was protein, protein, protein. And I shifted out of that mindset and now developed a different relationship with my workout regimen of it's not meant to punish me. It's not meant to be so rigid. It's meant to flow with me. And so that's one area that I encourage my clients to start working on themselves and to start nurturing themselves, even if it's just going out for a walk in nature, or if you do enjoy going to the gym, right? But then also being able to honor the days that you're tired and that, getting through a leg day is not possible, like it's okay to feel tired. It's okay to not plug into that regimen. What are you needing? Is it going to a yoga class? Is it just some light stretching? So being able to honor your body in that way. The other thing is nutrition. Nutrition has a giant effect on our moods, on our emotions. And it's not just the way of eating clean, right? But also really ensuring that you're eating the micronutrients, that you're getting your vitamins and minerals in, that you're taking care of yourself, that you're eating, I would say, like the rainbow, right? You're getting a full array of whole foods, really pulling back from the processed foods. The processed foods are full of chemicals and preservatives and things that really mix up the signals in our body and really are destructive to our gut health. And our gut health is so vital for our minds, right? They're so interconnected, and they're not separate. We tend to treat the mind as like the end all be all. And it's very much tied to everything that's happening within the body. So being able to nourish yourself, ensuring that you're drinking plenty of water and that you're eating from a place of being intuitive, and getting the full array of veggies and fruits and tuning into what works for you. Again, everyone's always different. Unless you're on a regiment for a competition or something like that, I totally respect that if you have a very strict goal set up for yourself. But if you're not, if you're just trying to start building this relationship with yourself, then this is just a great way to start tuning in to what feels good to you. You'll start to notice how food affects you. You'll have things and you'll be like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. I feel like crap after I ate that, and then you're going to eat things and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I feel energized. I feel so good after eating that. I feel really light. And so tune into those little moments, because that's your body sending you those signals of what it needs, what's working for it, and what's not.
So if I could interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
So speaking of those two things, the movement and nutrition, it seems like a lot begins with the awareness of what your body is needing, as you're talking about. So how do we develop that really knowing and awareness to know what our body needs, the type of, like, if we just need a walk, or if we are, shouldn't be eating that because it's really like not making us feel the best way. Like, how do we really develop that awareness? Because if somebody is so disconnected from themselves, maybe they're so out of touch with really what is right for them, So how do we really start to develop more the awareness of that?
As a meditation teacher, I'm always going to bring it back to meditation and sitting in that stillness and, slowing down. Meditation is a practice to allow you to draw in all your senses. Everything in this world is pulling our attention, right? You're driving, there's billboards, the radio is going, your phone is dinging, ringing, everything is pulling your attention outwards. And so by bringing yourself into this moment of stillness, you're drawing back all your senses to yourself. There's a myth. Oh,
no, so key. I just think it's so true.
Yeah. And so we have, I think, this misconception around meditation and thinking that it needs to be this practice that you have to sit for like an hour or 2 hours a day, or it's this, or people are always like, I'm really bad at it, and it's like, it's a practice. Like, I'm always just like, It's practice, right? If you played sports, if you played an instrument, what do? You go and you practice. Even working out is a practice, right? You're training your muscles. And that's what we're doing with our meditation practice, is training our muscles, training our body, training our mind to slow down and to connect to each other. And so every day is going to be different, right? Some days you're going to sit down and you're going to be able to like tune in right away. And then there's going to be days that you didn't get that ease that you were looking for, and that's okay. You just walk away. You don't sit there and try to push through, right? That mentality of doing. Yeah. You allow yourself to be like, I sat down, I showed up for my practice, and that's what matters. And then you move on, and then you come back to it tomorrow, and it'll be a whole different story. Meditation can be something as quick as 5 minutes, or it can be that hour if that's where you're at, and that's where how much time you're ready to devote to your practice. But it meets you exactly where you're at. But it's creating that space to allow that practice to come in. It doesn't have to be this holier than thou or this 5-hour devotional. It can be something as quick as just, taking 5 minutes and connecting with your breath. Or it can be going on a walk in nature and just turning off your phone, leaving it in the car, and just, because even
don't take the phone. Yes.
Yeah. Even when we're out in nature, we're still like plugged in. We're still like scrolling, answering text messages, emails, right? So being able to leave the phone in the car and really tune into that energy, whatever's going on inside you. So it can be an active meditation, or it can be something that you're sitting still for.
And when you talk about self-care, obviously everybody's heard like self-care is not selfish, but for those parents, let's say parents that have kids and they have a husband or a wife or whatever it may be, they have people to take care of. And they are noticing this tug that they need to start taking care of themselves, and they feel overwhelmed, burnt out, whatever it may be. And they want to nurture that and listen to those pulls, right? But how do we avoid, for those listening in that case, avoid the guilt of taking that time for ourselves when there's so much to take care of, externally, meaning our kids, they're going back to school, the husband's working hard, or whatever it may be. How do we communicate that we need to take care of ourselves? Like, this is what my soul is calling for me. How do we communicate that and get support from our family our husband, wife, kids, whatever it may be?
That conversation starts internally.
Mm.
Because they're not even shaming you. You haven't even had the conversation with them,
There
right?
you go. Reality
You're
check,
guilting.
right? That's funny.
You're guilting yourself. I do not have children, but I feel that guilt sometimes when I'm trying to take a break from my business.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't. I don't have time.
We
So
go into this whole thing. Yes.
yeah. So I'm guilty. Who's guilting me? My business isn't looking at me. My clients aren't looking at me like you're irresponsible for taking time off. That conversation is happening internally. That's how I'm speaking to myself, right? I'm guilting myself. So that is the first place to start is, whoa, I'm guilting myself, and where is this coming from, right? And after you address that and have that conversation internally and being like, okay, I'm feeling guilty because I'm, going to take a break from my children. That makes me a bad mom. That's saying that I don't want to be around them. That makes me selfish. And then being able to kind of come back and say, hey, like, I'm needing this in order to fill up my cup so I can show up that much stronger for them, that much more present for them. I can overflow to pour into them, because when you're not taking care of yourself, you're actually starting to give from a place of depletion.
Emptiness, yeah.
And then you start to resent those around you that you're giving to, right? You're like, I'm always there for them and they're never here for me. I'm always giving and I never receive. And you start to view the world in that light. And it doesn't have to be like that because you're not giving it to yourself. Everything always starts with ourselves. The most important relationship that we have is with ourselves. The relationship that we have with ourselves is going to be mirrored back by those around us. So I think that that's the first key, is really having the conversation with yourself, or tuning into what's coming up for you when you're trying to take a day to yourself or to go take this workshop that's calling to you, right? And if you're feeling that guilt, you need to kind of turn into yourself and be able to nurture yourself through it and honor that, hey, these things make me feel good. And by me feeling good, I get to pour that much more love into those that are around me, into my children, into my husband. I get to show up that much brighter for my business or for them, and that's the importance of taking care of yourself. It's not being selfish. It's being able to pour into yourself so you can continue to pour into those around you, into those key relationships in your life.
Agreed. So agreed with that. And when you touch on food, I'm just out of curiosity. I don't know if you're vegan or if you share with those that you work with how certain foods carry, well, everything is energy, right? And so certain foods, the importance of, and I know this is a whole topic in itself, but when it comes to food and unblocking or removing any block, if you want to say energy block, do you recommend certain types of food to, if you want to say, if somebody is going through this healing path with you and doing your program, what would you recommend and how does that serve them to help them get to their highest consciousness and authentic self?
So funny enough, before I went through my spiritual awakening, I stopped eating meat. And I didn't watch anything, nothing particularly happened. I just started to literally get grossed out by meat. And if you would have asked me prior to, I would have told you that was never going to happen. I was never going to give up steak. I could give up everything else, but I was not giving up a good piece of steak. And it naturally started to happen for me. Sure enough, when you're going for your Reiki training, you end up doing a cleanse, a 21-day cleanse, and you stop eating meat. I didn't know this, but this is how my higher self was, almost, or the universe was preparing me for what was going to come. And like you said, everything is energy, and it's energy in the foods that we eat. And so when you break it down, when you start to look at your nutrition from that level of, I'm expecting energy from something that is dead. I'm just leaving it there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Is there much more to say to that?
Yeah. Like, I'm expecting something that is dead to give me energy. You know, that sums it up. And then you start to look at how we source our foods, right? So I will never tell, even when I was doing personal training, I would never tell a client, like, you know, you need to be vegan or you need to be plant-based, or you do what feels right for you, right? It's a journey for you to figure out. You know, for me, I went in and out of it and eventually found myself in the space that I am today. But it has to align with you. It can't be forced, right? I think sometimes, a lot of times with nutrition, we want to hold on to a label. We want to be like, I'm vegan, or I'm this, or I'm that, I'm keto, I'm Atkins, I don't know, whatever else is out there, right? And it's like, just tune into what feels good to you. And so when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to like meat and any of those products, I will always say, at least be mindful of where you're sourcing it, right? The way that we conventionally source our meat, you know, they're pumped full of hormones, they're pumped full of drugs. You know, they're inhumanely treated, and then they get slaughtered and they're served at, you know, you buy that at supermarket, and you're taking all of those things in. You're taking in these hormones, these drugs that are actually these antibiotics that are not tested past the point of the animal. So the drugs are tested on how they affect the animal, right? Ensuring that it's preventing them from catching diseases and viruses. And that's it. They're not tested on how they are affected once we consume them. Nothing is testing that. So you're taking on their hormones, their antibiotics, the energy of the fear that they were living in.
Yeah.
If you really want to break it into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at least if you know, if you're not ready to go into a space of being plant-based, at least considering where you're sourcing your product from. So ensuring that you're getting, you know, grass-fed, cage-free, range-free, you know, your eggs, ensuring that you're getting the best of the best when it comes to, you know, your dairy products, your eggs and animal products. Because if not, you're consuming that energy. And so everything, I think that once you start to have compassion for yourself, you start to have compassion for everything around you. Mm-hmm. And so being able to have compassion for these animals that are nourishing you, if at least if you're going to eat animal products, at least viewing it from that light, like ensuring that you're putting in the best and the best animal product that you can, and that they were treated in the most humane way. And then if you're ready to start going down the path of going plant-based or going vegan, taking it easy on yourself. There's so many great bloggers out there. There's so many great resources out there now compared to years ago, where I was like, I'm just going to eat bread. Like, I don't know what else to eat, you know, or like eat rice.
Yeah, there's
and
so much out there now. I feel so, you know, you and I have experienced different, if you want to say, layers in life that, you know, I don't know your age, but like not having a cell phone, not having technology to live by, and actually just being and able to, you know, be playing in the play yard, whatever, without distraction and whatnot. And then we've seen obviously all these fad diets. We've seen our world completely evolve and shape into something else constantly. And where we are today is, I think, just so, I'm trying to put it into words. Like, I think it's so phenomenal that we have so many resources, so much knowledge at our fingertips if we choose to indulge in it. And I just think it's great how there's so much being uncovered that we could inform ourselves with, especially when it comes to diet. We are so fortunate in that regard, and that there is better choices as far as like grass-fed, free range, all that. So I think we're very blessed in that regard.
Yeah, it's
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just a matter of looking it up, right? And then just, there's always good, better, best. And, not everyone is fortunate to be able to eat organic and cage free and that's, and I understand that, but being able to make the better choice at where you're at. Absolutely. And eventually getting to the best.
Yes.
So I want to offer that little gem as well, because, not everyone's able to dive right away and be like, okay, I'm buying everything organic.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. I love that. Good, better, and best. Absolutely. So I wanted to, just to kind of wrap it up, because going back to kind of your background and the importance of going on our own healing journey, but also for the reason that, and I think you talk about this, obviously I've heard a lot of healers talk about this, is we are the ones that are stopping the cycle from our ancestors, like our trauma that has been brought down from generations to generations, because it does really, it trickles down into everybody's life. Mm-hmm. And so to do the healing ourselves, we get to be the one that stops that trauma in its tracks so that we don't carry it on to next generations. So I'd love if you could kind of share that and what you offer. I know you have a program called Soul Embodied. So I would love to hear how your program helps others go on that healing journey to be the ones that stop that trajectory going into next generations that in their life,
Yeah. Oh, there's so many, like we could really go into all of this. I'm like, oh, okay. So so the trauma does continue through our lineage. One case in point is our vagus nerve. So when our mom gives birth to us at that point in time, we are literally imprinted with her vagus nerve in our system. Right? So where she's at in that point in time, we literally are already imprinted. We already have those traumas carried in us. If you continue to break it down even more, this is where you go into like epigenetics. And this is where things are already passed down through DNA. So not only in the way of, you have the features of your mom, you have her hair, her eye colors, but you're also carrying the trauma of, your great grandmother, or from your paternal side. You're already carrying those DNA imprints from them. So it really runs deep. And like I said, we just go deep into this, but we'll leave it at that. So it's not just, you're not just carrying the trauma of the things that you're experiencing and you experienced in your life, but you're also carrying the trauma of your parents and your great grandparents. And it's continuing through there. So being able to start healing yourself and addressing the things that you've experienced, but also, some of your thought patterns, some of your perspectives, some of your fears already come down through them. So being able to, again, start bringing awareness to where are these thoughts coming from, and where is this perspective coming from? Is it mine or is it someone else's? And being able to kind of be like, okay, if it's not mine, I'm releasing that. And then if it is mine, where does it come from? Mm-hmm. And sitting with that and being able to pull back the layers. And so for me, when I work with women and through this Soul Embodied program, it's being able to work with them on all facets. So being able to provide support through one-to-one. So giving them that support through us having those individual calls and meeting them where they're at and providing any support that they're needing. So I always let my coaching space always be very intuitive and let it be directed by, my higher self, my client's higher self, and being able to integrate that for them. So that's pulling in the different modalities, whether they're needing Reiki at that point in time, if we're needing to go and through a very deep healing meditation session, or walking them through breath work. And then being able to hold the mirror for them, right? Because I'm here to support you, but I'm also here to give you, I'm not going to say tough love, but to also give you a reality check, and to be able to help you and mirror back to you what you're needing at that point in time. And then providing community for them. When we start this healing journey, it can feel very isolating. You no longer fit in those places that you used to fit in. You're no longer called to be around those same people you used to be around. You start to look different to those around you, and they're like, "What's wrong with you? Like, what's going on?" You're just kind of feeling removed, and you're just kind of questioning, there has to be something wrong with me. So coming into a space of other women who are going through that journey, who want to support you as well, who are experiencing the same thing that you are, and are there to hold that sacred space for you. And so that's another big component for them. And then just continuing to provide any support that they're needing in that space of coming together, and also having other guest coaches who are geniuses in their realm, right? So I have someone who I pull in, and she is her jam is womb wisdom, and so it's all about healing that sacred space. She comes in and she shares that knowledge and starts sharing. She has a medical background. She was a nurse, so she comes to share information with them about, how to take care of yourself and the medical side of things, but then also integrating those healing modalities and what's happening here. A lot of times women have a lot of blockages that are manifesting physically in their body, right? We're seeing a lot more fibroids coming up. What is it? PCOS, polycystic ovary.
What's the other one? And there's lots of womanly stuff.
Yeah, and like fertility issues, right?
Yes,
and so there's a lot happening in this space. So I'm not dismissing our medical system and the wisdom that lies in that, but also being able to bring in practices that are going to help you align and clear out that energy or any blockages, and bring wisdom into that space. So being able to pull in guest coaches that are going to share their wisdom and help you pull in practices that are going to help you start taking care of yourself and honoring your energy from a spirit, mind, body perspective. And so you take in what you're ready to receive, right? Something might really call into you. You might start implementing journaling or meditation at that point in time, and someone might really gravitate towards the nutritional component of the program. And that's what they're needing. But you're here, you're being supported and guided through those 12 weeks, and you have community, and you have sisterhood, and you have someone to hold you accountable, but hold a nurturing space as well.
It sounds phenomenal. And I think what's so beautiful that you say is that you will receive what you need right then and there. Like whatever is calling for you to move you in the right direction. Like it's different for everybody. And I think getting to that place and that awareness to be able to receive and kind of surrender to and let go, so that you can make space for what you need, and to actually make that space to receive, which is so important. So I love the container that you've built, and it sounds amazing. And I know we'll plug that in the show notes. So just to kind of wrap this up, because there's so much goodness, and I know just the whole path of healing and being able to move the trap energy out of you and release it so that more goodness could come, and that you could operate from your highest self and your highest consciousness is so vital and so important and so intriguing. So thank you for everything you shared. So where can people best find you, first of all?
First of all, thank you again for having me on here. And this was such a beautiful conversation. Everyone can find me on Instagram. I'm really active on there, and that's at Jacarina Soto. So that's Jacarina Soto. And I'm usually on there a lot, sharing a lot of information and noting when I have workshops. I do virtual and in-person workshops all the time. And then I also have my website, Jacarina Says. You can find me on there. And I usually both offer ways to book with me directly, whether it's a one-to-one Reiki session or we can do distance if you're not nearby. That's the beauty of Reiki. Reiki can go anywhere.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And then I have my program coming up soon as well. So I'll be enrolling and taking applications for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I always, in closing, like to ask my guests one question specifically, because I love so many people give different answers. So if you were to write a book and on the first page, you wanted to leave a piece of advice that you've learned along your journey, what would that life piece of advice be?
It would be, you are worthy. You are worthy of everything that you want, and it is possible. Everything is possible. The only limitations that are being placed on you are by you. So those would be my words.
Truth. That's so true. It's so true that we are the ones putting the limitations on ourselves, that really, truly anything is possible. And if that person has done it, they are showing you that it's truly possible. I love that. Thank you for that. It's beautiful. So Jacarina, this has been such an honor. Thank you for your beautiful energy, your peacefulness. Yeah, I feel so much peace in your presence. I love it. So
thank you.
You are such a beautiful soul, and thank you for the work you're doing in this world. And everybody go check her out. And I can't wait to see where you evolve and the goodness you share in this world. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.